Thank you for stopping by. I was reading an article yesterday on the BBC, the website, and they were referring to the forgotten conflict in Africa, and that is what is happening in Sudan. The conflict that started in April, I believe, and that is being mediated in Saudi Arabia. The US is a party, and IGAD, which was appointed to represent the African Union, is also party to that. Although I don't know if IGAD is having an active role in this mediation process. Not quite, which is quite unfortunate because I think IGAD could have been the body to spearhead this mediation process. We saw what happened in Ethiopia after the 2 years of war. The breach that was brokered by the mediators that were appointed by the African Union, I think they did a good job. Of course, there have been some reports that there has been a renewed of violence in certain areas, and there are developments that are ongoing there that have the capacity to compromise that peace or the progress that has been made in regards to that mediation process and that conflict. And so it is something that we should monitor keenly. But the reason why the mediation process in Ethiopia perhaps was successful to a good extent is we had a very minimal interference from the externalities that are outside of the continent. It was led by Kenya's former president Uhuru Kenyatta and former Nigerian president, I think he was the chief mediator, Olusegun Obasanjo. He had tried mediating, it was not very successful over a year, and then President Uhuru Kenyatta came in, and we saw the progress, and they reached that agreement in South Africa last year. Actually, they marked 1 year a few days ago in November. Maybe 2 days ago. Today is on the 9th of November. And it was successful because we did not have a lot of foreign voices in that process. But the problem with Sudan, because all of this conflict, when you look at the conflicts in Africa, they all have different interest, competing parties, competing factors. So they don't always have the same, they can't always have the same approach. And so I do understand what is happening in Sudan and the kind of issues and the problems that have brought the country to where it is today. It is not similar to what is happening in Ethiopia. And so maybe that's why it was easier to mediate through the process in Ethiopia and get a solution, even though some developments are worrying there, but at least they were able to come to a solution. But the mediation process for Sudan that has been ongoing in Jeddah, according to that news item I was reading yesterday, has not borne any fruits yet. There's nothing to write home about. They're not even able to agree on ceasefire. I think they put it down, but every now and then both sides have violated this. And so this article was saying that with everything else going on in the world, the conflict like that of Sudan and many others in the continent have been forgotten. Well, I keep saying, Africa, we are on our own. There's an active conflict. I was checking the figures yesterday in Cameroon, between the Francophone and the Anglophone, the Ambazonia, what they call themselves, the Ambazonians, the Anglophones who have been wanting to secede, and that story. Paul Biya, who is the second longest serving president in Africa, just celebrated 41 years in power, I think on the 6th as well of this month. And This has been a running conflict that has really claimed a lot of innocent lives. We have another conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo that also, every time you see the updates, the killings are continuing. And that conflict also has so many facets that, and so many interests and so many players, and a lot of them are external. So it has made it so complex that finding an ultimate solution is difficult. And just the other day, I think, because President Felix Tshisekedi was not really keen on having the mandate of the East African forces to be renewed, the peacekeepers from the East African community. So he was leaning more towards SADC, because the DRC is also a member of SADC, to see if he could get forces from there. And SADC has been very reluctant to do so. And that is also now complex, and there's not been much progress in that. So I'm saying all this to say, in reference to that article I was reading from the BBC, that with everything going on in the world, with the conflict in Palestine, Gaza, Israel, and all that, and the Ukraine war, and all these other things, Africa, we are on the periphery. So it has always been easy to be put in the back burner. When they have time, then they will come and sort out your issues. We have never been a priority to these Western powers, because sometimes our leaders forget this. So that's why they're always running abroad to get help, to get loans, to get work, to seek alliances that sometimes are not even very meaningful. And when push comes to shove, we are always left by ourselves. And it is time Africa realized that we are on our own. And I'm a huge believer that African problems can only be solved in the context of Africa finding its own solutions. This conflict we are having, why are we having Sudan's conflict being mediated in Saudi Arabia? Of course, there are other factors because of other external forces that are involved. And so we have to ask ourselves, IGAD would have been the right body to mediate that process. But I guess, I don't know if Kenya is the reason why IGAD couldn't go ahead, because of the comments that our president made. I'm not sure if that is the reason. And so the generals were not comfortable with having Kenya, because Kenya, South Sudan, South Sudan is very familiar with the conflict in Sudan. It had been President Salva Kiir has been mediating this process, the holdout groups, militants, and all that. He's been having this mediation and side process for a while now, so it was going on well. So it made sense that President Salva Kiir will be part of that team. And then Kenya was included, and Djibouti was included. But I don't know if it's the comments that our president of Kenya made that sort of compromised the position of IGAD and, to lead this process. But IGAD now is just playing a second role, not even second. IGAD is just there to be told what has been said in there, and then they're given a report, which is really, really sad and unfortunate. And because of that, you can see how this process is really dragging, and the mediation process is not bearing any fruits compared to, perhaps what we saw in South Africa. It took a while, but when they got down to it, they were able to realize some sort of an agreement and some truth. So we are on our own, really, and we can never get a sustainable solution outside of the continent. African solutions will always come from Africa. And until we realize that anybody showing interest in helping or being part of us, they only do that if there's an opportunity there for them to serve their interest. If there's not an opportunity there, or the situation they can't maximize on getting what they want compared to another situation, then they will put you on a back burner. And so once they're done with what they think is a high priority for them, then they'll think about you. So this article just got me thinking, we have so much going on. Even that time the African leaders went to, led by President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, they went to Ukraine and all that to try to mediate. And at that time, we were in the thick of the conflict in Sudan. And I didn't see that convoy try to go to Sudan and find a solution. Our priorities are just upside down. I do understand that we also have a responsibility in the international system, but you can't go cleaning someone else's home, and yours is dirty. Charity begins at home. You must start by fixing what it is that we are supposed to fix here. Then when we speak outside of the continent, then maybe they will start paying attention to what we have to say. Okay, so when we run these ultimatums sometimes and everything is broken down here, they just laugh at us. They don't take us very seriously. So yeah, the conflicts in Africa are of no importance right now. Our lives, the people who are suffering in Sudan, there's a lot, and there's some ethnic cleansing that is ongoing now in Sudan. And nobody's talking about it. It's not getting as much publicity as it should, because attention has shifted to what is, is what is happening. Because I think what is happening in Gaza is really of high magnitude, and I can't even for a moment downplay that. But what also is happening, the ethnic cleansing that is ongoing in Sudan, the kind of chaos, the kind of people that are being forcefully being displaced, the kind of things that is happening in Cameroon, the kind of chaos that we see happening in parts of Nigeria. I mean, these are things that also requires attention, but we can't expect the world to give these things attention. We are supposed to give these things attention by ourselves. African Union is supposed to be on the lead to try and address these issues. I see the issue of migration and what is happening in the Mediterranean, and how many Africans keep dying. And that problem now is being seen because, Italy and the countries that are accessible from that end, they try to, what has been happening is they try to curtail the coming in of these migrants from Africa and from other parts of the world, but mostly from Africa. And it's interesting that we've left this matter as a lot of our young men and women are dying in the Mediterranean. And this has never been an urgent thing to be discussed in the African Union. But we are quick to complain when Greece or Italy or the countries around there are refusing, or the way they're mishandling this the citizens, especially from Africa, which is absolutely out of order. But we can't make that their problem. If, as grave as that matter is, as many people who have been dying in the Mediterranean as they have been, and this has never been an urgent thing to be discussed in the African Union, it baffles me. And so when we see how the ships are capsizing, Greece is having all this policy on migration, Italy, and we know the kind of prime minister they have right now, extremist. She's far right. And so the policy is different now. But we only see that. We don't see what is the part that we are playing and what can the continent do to minimize these dangerous journeys and to be part of the solution. It's interesting, really, that we don't even think about it, but we complain so much and we make noise, as we should, when they die in the sea or when they're being mishandled and all that, but we are not willing to have these difficult conversations and see what is it that we're doing here in the continent and how can we ensure that we also try to find a solution that our young men and women don't have to make these dangerous journeys trying to go to a place that they're not even wanted. It's really something. But anyway, we are on our own, and to wait for the Western world to come and fix our problems and address our issues, that is that. Mm-mm. So we shouldn't wait for the West to come and address the conflict in Sudan. We should have African Union. We should have new mediation team. If IGAD is not doing enough, let's appoint another body. Let's try to do something about it. That's all I'm saying, so that we don't sit here and hope that after the Gaza, what is happening in Gaza has stopped, then now they'll come, the rest of the powers will come here and try to help us address our own issues. I think that is just out of order. So anyway, I think that the minute people realize, and if we didn't learn anything from COVID, because COVID offered us very vital lessons, but it brought in some rise of nationalism in Europe and other parts, where they had to look after themselves first. Before we could get the vaccines, before we could get anything, they had to make sure they were okay. And if that wasn't a lesson enough for us, then I don't know what is it that needs to happen for us to wake up and realize that the future and the changes that we need in this continent will never come from outside, but it is upon us to effect these changes, really.